Okay, picture this with me, if you will. You're in this dimly lit control room. The air is just humming with tension, right? Screens everywhere, tiny flashing blips. Those are multi-million-dollar jets streaking across a combat zone, incredibly fast speeds. Every single second, every decision you make, it's critical. Absolutely critical. Lives depend on it, on your precision, your clarity, nerves of steel, really. Now, this isn't just some scene out of a movie. It's the daily reality for fighter controllers in the Indian Air Force. But, and this is the thing, right now, the most intense drama isn't actually playing out up there in the skies. No, it's unfolding right here on the ground inside the Supreme Court of India. And this isn't just, another legal fight. This is a really crucial battle. It's about the future of some of the IAF's most brilliant women officers, people who've dedicated their lives to serving the nation. So today, we're doing a deep dive into this specific legal fight. We're going to unpack the details, try to understand the broader implications for gender equality across all the armed forces, and really reveal why this battle, fought in these quiet courtrooms, matters so much to all of us.
Yeah, and what's really significant about this particular case, I think, is that it's more than just a legal dispute. It really isn't. It acts like a powerful mirror, reflecting this much larger societal conversation we're having about fundamental questions, like who gets opportunities, who gets to serve their nation fully, without these sort of artificial barriers, and what does true fairness, what does meritocracy actually look like inside institutions as vital as the armed forces? It goes beyond just policy. It really touches on principle, national capability, equity. It's all tied up in this.
Okay, let's get into it then. Let's introduce the central figure here, Wing Commander Kavita Bhati. Now, her career, it's impressive. Over a decade of service, and not just meeting expectations, but consistently exceeding them. Her record is, it's impeccable. Full of achievements. And she's not just any officer, she's a highly specialized fighter controller. To really get what that means, think of her as the brain behind the air operations. She's giving the critical guidance, those split-second commands, making sure jets don't collide, they hit their targets.
And pilots come home safe?
It's exactly. Pilots come home safe. She's basically the air traffic controller, but for high-octane combat missions. It demands nerves of steel, yes, but also this razor-sharp intellect, instant decision-making. Under incredible pressure.
Immense pressure.
Her operational record shows it all, over a decade of vital work. But here's the kicker. Here's where the story takes that turn. Despite this absolutely stellar service, the IAF moved to deny her a permanent commission, just as her short service commission term was coming to an end.
And to understand why that denial is such a big deal, we probably need to quickly explain those terms, SSC and PC. So an SSC, short service commission, is basically a fixed-term contract, usually runs for, 10 to 14 years for officers. And once that's up, unless you get granted a permanent commission, a PC, your career in the force is over. Simple as that.
Right.
The PC, the permanent commission, that's the long haul. That's the career path. It gives you job security until retirement, you're eligible for promotions, and crucially, you get a pension. Stability for you and your family. Now, historically, for a very long time, women officers in the IAF, and really across the forces.
They were mostly limited to SSC roles, weren't they?
Exactly. Largely confined to SSC, often in admin, logistics, support roles. Not really a clear path to permanent service. It wasn't really until those landmark Supreme Court rulings, particularly starting around 2020, that things began to change. Those judgments were huge. They made women eligible for PCs across many more roles, including combat support roles.
A major shift.
A major shift. But, and this is the key point now, eligibility doesn't mean automatic conversion. It's not guaranteed. Officers still have to go through these evaluations by selection boards. And that process, as we're seeing right here, that's become the new battleground. That's where this conflict is really playing out.
So you have this system, a short-term contract. It should ideally lead to long-term security if you perform well. But for many women, it's just been this persistent barrier, and that's exactly where Wing Commander Kavita Bhati found herself.
So what happened next in the Supreme Court? June 16th, 2025. That really sent a signal, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The bench, Justices Ujjal Puyan and Manmohan, they didn't just, hear arguments. They issued a very direct, very firm directive, basically put the IAF on notice. They ordered the center and the Air Force to keep Wing Commander Bhati in service, continue her service until the next hearing date.
So like a stay, essentially.
Essentially, yes. Keep her employed. It felt like the court was playing, judicial whack-a-mole, constantly having to step in and question these decisions, scrutinizing every move the IAF made in this regard.
Yeah, watching closely.
Very closely. And what makes this even more striking is the precedent, the immediate precedent.
Yeah.
Because just a month before that, May 22nd, 2025, the Supreme Court had issued an almost identical order, for another decorated IAF officer, Wing Commander Nikita Pandey. Right, I remember reading about that.
So this isn't just a one-off. This consistency from the highest court, it shows a real pattern of concern, a deep underlying concern. When the judges in Bhati's hearing specifically mentioned Pandey's case, it wasn't just citing law. It was a clear signal to the IAF. We've seen this exact situation before. We are watching, and we expect a proper explanation.
Like, get your house in order.
Precisely. It suggests the judiciary is losing patience with what looks like a systemic issue, not just isolated cases.
Okay, so let's talk more about Wing Commander Nikita Pandey's story then, because the parallels, as you said, they are quite striking. She also has this absolutely exceptional record. We're talking participation in really high-stakes operations, Balakot in 2019, Sindor in 2025. These aren't just training exercises.
No, these are frontline, high-pressure situations, critical missions.
Absolutely. And her achievements, get this. She ranked second in the entire country among expert fighter controllers. This is someone at the very top of her specialized field. Over 13 and a half years of dedicated service.
Incredible record.
Incredible. Yet despite all of this, a policy change back in 2019 significantly impacted her career path, and it led to her being denied a permanent commission. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Dedicating over a decade, reaching the absolute pinnacle, and then your career path is just cut off. Not because you didn't perform, but because of a policy shift.
Yeah.
It's like the rug was just pulled out from under her.
Yeah, it's jarring. And the Supreme Court's reaction in her case, in Pandey's case, was really strong, very direct. Justices Surya Khan and N. Kurtiswar Singh, they acknowledged the IAF is, one of the best organizations in the world.
Which it is, of course.
Absolutely. But they didn't mince words expressing their concern. They said flat out that the uncertainty these SSC officers face is not good for the armed forces, full stop. And Justice Khan, he made this very pointed suggestion, almost rhetorical. He said, look, if the IAF can manage and train 100 SSC officers, then it surely must find a way to grant PCs to those who are suitable.
Kind of challenging their logic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Challenging the bureaucratic hurdles, maybe hinting at underlying biases. And the court didn't just talk, it acted. It ordered a second selection board review for Pandey, essentially forcing a reevaluation, telling the IAF, look at this again, considering what we just said.
Right.
That ruling really set the stage, created the precedent for the August 6th hearing, which will now look at both Bhati and Pandey together.
Right. Okay, so before we critique that, let's try to understand the IAF's position. As presented by the Additional Solicitor General, Aishwarya Bhati, what's their main argument?
Well, their primary justification seems to be this concept of a steep pyramidal structure.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Basically, they argue the military needs fewer people at the top than at the bottom, like a pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
Broad base of junior officers, much narrower peak of senior ranks. So they contend this structure naturally means not everyone can climb all the way up. Not everyone can get a PC.
Makes sense structurally, I suppose.
Structurally, yes. And they add that while many SSC officers are, quote, brilliant, highly capable, only a select few make the final cut for PC based on what they call comparative merit.
Comparative merit, meaning they compare officers against each other?
Presumably, comparing them against their peers also eligible at that time. And they also bring up the argument about needing to keep the forces young, saying this requires some officers to exit after their 14 years, ensuring a flow of fresh talent, maintaining agility.
Okay, the youth argument. We hear that a lot in different contexts.
We do. So pyramid structure, comparative merit, keeping the force young, those are the core justifications presented.
So let's unpack that, because it immediately raises questions, doesn't it? If it's truly about comparative merit, how does someone like Wing Commander Pandey rank second nationally?
Second in the country.
Among all expert fighter controllers still get deemed unfit for a PC. It just doesn't seem to add up.
It really doesn't. It makes you wonder, like you said, is the merit meter broken? Is it accurately measuring merit? Or could comparative merit in these specific high-profile cases be acting as a sort of, well, a fancy excuse, maybe masking a deeper bias, even if it's unconscious?
Especially when you consider the numbers you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. When typically something like 90–95% of all SSC officers are generally found fit for PC. So denying these incredibly decorated officers, it stands out. The numbers just don't seem to align.
And the youth argument. What about that?
Well, sure, maintaining an agile force is important. No one disputes that. But is the best way to achieve that by losing hugely experienced officers like Bhati and Pandey, people with irreplaceable institutional knowledge, highly specialized skills, people who could be training the next generation?
That seems counterintuitive.
It does. If we're using the pyramid analogy, maybe the IAF should look at the Egyptians. Those pyramids lasted thousands of years because they were built on a solid foundation, right?
Yeah.
Every brick contributing, not by kicking out the best ones after a decade or so.
Good point. Losing assets like that feels like it undermines the very strength they're trying to preserve.
Precisely. It seems to contradict the goal of maintaining a strong, capable force.
So stepping back from the individual cases, what does this all signify for the bigger picture, for you, the listener? Wing Commander Bhati's case, while deeply personal for her, it really feels like a snapshot, a microcosm of this much larger struggle, this ongoing battle for gender equality within India's armed forces, which has been going on for decades now.
A long, hard road.
A really long, bumpy road, paved with court cases, protests, relentless advocacy, just to get opportunities the male counterparts often took for granted. It's often described as a glass ceiling, but in the military context, maybe feels more like, I don't know, bureaucratic steel.
Right.
Reinforced steel, designed to slow down or stop full integration.
Yeah, and if we connect that to the strategic implications, denying PCs to officers like these isn't just unfair individually. It impacts India's defense readiness. When you lose a top-ranked fighter controller, a veteran of critical operations, you're losing more than just personnel.
You're losing expertise.
You're losing invaluable institutional memory, highly specialized skills that take years, maybe decades to develop. And you're losing potential mentors, trainers for the future leaders. That directly affects operational readiness, capability, the whole system. Can any nation, especially today, really afford to sideline its big assets, as Justice Kant called them?
Especially when they're at the peak of their game.
Exactly. For reasons that, under scrutiny, just don't seem to hold water against their actual performance. Justice Kant's statement was so powerful, they are a big asset for the nation. The Supreme Court here, it's acting like that really strict teacher, the one who catches you cutting corners on your homework and makes you redo it properly.
Holding them to a higher standard.
Insisting on higher standards. They're basically telling the IAF, look, sidelining half your talent pool, especially the most experienced ones, isn't a winning strategy. A nation's real strength comes from using all its talent effectively. And these cases really hammer that point home.
So where does that leave us now? What's the next step in this legal saga?
The Supreme Court has set the date. August 6, 2025. That's when the next hearing is scheduled. And crucially, both Wing Commander Bhati's and Wing Commander Pandey's cases will be heard together by a regular bench.
So you're linking the two cases officially now?
Yes. And until that date, thanks to the court's earlier order, Wing Commander Bhati remains in service. She keeps her wings. And the IAF, well, they have another chance, another opportunity to reconsider, to maybe recalibrate that merit meter.
So the big question is, will this second selection board, knowing the Supreme Court is watching so closely, finally grant them the PCs, acknowledge their service and merit?
Or will this judicial oversight have to continue? Will the court need to keep stepping in? That uncertainty, it really hangs in the air, doesn't it?
It does. And for you listening, this whole struggle, it really goes beyond just these two officers, as compelling as their stories are. It's fundamentally about fairness. It's about opportunity. It's about what kind of country we aspire to be, one that truly values and utilizes all its talent, regardless of gender.
Mm-hmm. And it really pushes us to think critically, doesn't it, about how policies, even ones that sound neutral like comparative merit or pyramidal structure, how they can sometimes, perhaps unintentionally, end up perpetuating bias, how they can exclude exceptional people, preventing them from contributing fully. It makes us question what real institutional strength looks like when it embraces everyone.
So the next time you read about or maybe see footage of a woman officer, whether she's flying a jet, guiding a mission from a control room, leading troops on the ground, just remember, she's not only doing her job, often an incredibly demanding one, she's also often breaking barriers, pushing against resistance, sometimes immense resistance, for herself and for those who will come after her. And I keep coming back to that quote from Justice Kant. It was so powerful, capturing their dedication. They are the nation, in a way. Because of them, we are able to sleep at night.
It really puts it in perspective. And this whole deep dive, looking at this fight, it leads to a bigger question for all of us, I think. What does it truly mean for a nation not just to recruit the best people, but to then fully support and leverage those valuable assets throughout their entire careers? Here's to a future where merit, genuine merit, not gender, is what truly calls the shots. So maybe the question to ponder is, what steps can we all take in our own lives, our own workplaces, our own communities to help make that future a reality across all parts of society.